Good evening, good afternoon. A thread, a rope, a chain, invisible to the naked eye, getting stronger all the time, spanning time and all distance, stretching over land and sea, a link between your heart and mine. Two strangers connected, yet we know the other exists, but only because we feel this thread, rope, chain through soul strings. Welcome to Soul Strings this evening. Those who are on Facebook, we like to welcome you once again, and all those on this platform, welcome, welcome once again. Over to you, Menaca.
Thank you, Kirbai. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining Soul Strings. A very warm welcome to you all. It's such a great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Shanthy Parameswaran. I got to know Dr. Shanthy from another charity when we worked together. What stands out for me before going into her credential is every single time I speak to Dr. Shanthy, she has something positive to tell. She always encourages us. And I think being a psychiatrist comes naturally to her. I only wish we have more psychiatrists like Dr. Shanthy. Going further about her credentials, she has been a consultant psychiatrist for children and adolescents for more than 3 decades. She has also worked in Ministry of Justice, in tribunals. She has been a part of Trauma Center for between UK and Sri Lanka, and she has been part of a lot of charity work across the world in many countries. And it is humbling that every time I request Dr. Shanthy, she immediately says yes to come and speak for us. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Shanthy. Can you please tell a couple of lines about you, Dr. Shanthy, and then we'll go into the conversation.
Thank you, Menaca, for those kind words. I think you have said enough about me. I don't think I like to add anything more. Child and adolescent psychiatry is a subspecialty which I took on after doing adult psychiatry. And I must say, I was fortunate to do something that I really enjoyed and also got paid for it. So I think that's what I would like to add to already what you have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shanthy. And I think that's what everybody promotes. It's, when you are passionate about something and then you can get paid for that, it's nothing like that. Around 1 in 8 children and young people are experiencing behavioral or emotional problems growing up, according to statistics. Do you think children and young babies have difficulties as well?
A very interesting question because quite a few people ask me whether babies and young children have mental health difficulties. I like to go a bit slightly tangentially and say that even when a baby is in the womb, the mother's emotions and feelings are felt by the unborn child. You would know from our cultures, both in East and West, when a mother, a lady falls pregnant, the lady is made to feel happy. She's given what she likes. Almost her wishes are met because it is thought, and it is correct now because scientists have said that and proved that a happy mother will produce a happy child. A mother who is unhappy, the child will be unhappy too. So that's why we have so many celebrations during the pregnancy period. 3 months in India, we have Valakapu, and then even at the end of we have baby showers, just to make the mother feel very precious, so that, not that they love the mother, I suppose, but to make sure that the baby born will be happy and all intact. So that's one of the things in answer to your question, yes, the children will feel emotions. And now, interestingly, I like to say that they have said that a baby also learns while in the womb. And I have time to read this article, which says, if I read it, 25 years ago, when Boris Brott was in his teens and rehearsing a score for a string quartet, he suddenly felt an overpowering sense of deja vu. Although he had never heard or seen that piece before, he somehow knew the cello part. He recalls that even before he saw them, the notes were very clear in his mind. The same happened with other scores, always the cello part mysteriously familiar. Intrigued, young Brett questioned his mother, who was a professional cello player herself. She listened to his story and asked for the names of the musical works and provided him with the on spot explanation, which was all the scores he seemed to know, sight unseen, she herself had been rehearsing when she was pregnant with him. So it looks like, if this is correct, and later a Toronto psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Thomas Verney has taken other instances like this and written a very interesting book called The Secret Life of the Unborn Child. So it looks like if these studies are accurate, then it is apparent that the fetus learns as well. So not only emotions or what the mother feels is transferred to the unborn baby. So to your question, Menaca, yes, babies can feel pain, can have feelings, and as you know, when the baby is born, takes his first breath, expands his lung, and it cries. And with hunger pains, he cries out for milk. If the milk doesn't come in time and he is not satisfied, for that small time, the baby does feel anxious and fearful with whether his hunger pains will be satisfied. So, for example, a mother who is depressed doesn't respond immediately or takes time, and it is she's inconsistent in the regularity of feeding the baby naturally feels fearful. And what does the baby do? Even when the baby milk is given, the baby will continue to cry because feels not sure, the fear in him, whether he'll get the milk again. So we will class these children as unhappy babies, crying babies, but knowing from where these feelings has come into the baby is interesting to know. And very often I see when I visit orphanages where children have multiple carers, there is no regularity, and the children are whinging all the time because they are not sure that fear has been instilled in them early on. So thank you for that question. That's a very interesting question. I'm always asked whether how early the children does. And just to end by saying, children like adults also have thoughts, and the thoughts will generate emotions within you, and how the child shows the emotions, depending on the age, of course, through expression, through words, and mainly through behavior.
Thank you, Dr. Shanthy. For those who don't understand Tamil, when Dr. Shanthy mentioned Valai Kapu, which means in India it is widely celebrated as well. You put the bangles, and I don't know exactly what it's called in Hindi, but you put the bangles and you celebrate that a lady is pregnant after a few months. That is the celebration Dr. Shanthy was mentioning. Thank you, Dr. Shanthy, for that. So when you see children, how can you notice that they are having difficulties? I mean, what I'm asking is, how do they express themselves to the world?
Again, a very relevant question. As I said, We got to remember even children, as I said early on, will have thoughts, emotions that arise from thoughts expressed through their expressions, or if the child is able to speak through their words, or mainly through their behavior. And in seeing children, one must be always consciously aware at the back of their mind the age of the child, because as you said, it depends on the age and how they express their behavior, the stage of their development. For example, if I take it can illustrate what I'm saying by a little example. A 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, when his or her wishes are not met, may fall to the ground, kick his legs, and cry, which we have all seen. But that is that age and the stage at which is. Remember, the child is a developing organism. It is developing all the time. But if this kind of behavior, falling on the ground, kicking and crying, or even wetting themselves at the age of 12, when the wishes are not met, then it becomes a problem. So we must always consider the age and the stage of the child, of develop stage at which the child is developing. For example, if the child is waiting at 3 years, we reassure them by 5 years they will get dry, or if the waiting continues till about 12 or 15, then it becomes a problem. Or if the child has been dry and then started to wait again, then we consider that as problem. So always consider the child's age and the stage of development. If I may add, I always, having worked with adults and with children latterly, the children are not brought to you, always brought to you by an adult who lives with the child. Whereas an adult can come to you and say, I'm depressed, I have not been able to concentrate on my work, and I can't do this. A child is always brought by an adult. So it's very important for us to empathize with the adult, listen to their story, how they view the problem, before we jump in and give our explanation to the problem. The reason being that the parent may have or the teachers may have one explanation, and if you give your explanatory model, which may be correct, what would happen? They will firstly may be dissatisfied. Secondly, they will get upset. And thirdly, more importantly, what happens sadly is they may not bring the child again to you, so the child loses out. So always I say, empathize, listen to their stories before jumping in and giving your opinion. And I have a maxim, which you may all think is funny, which is stroke, stroke, stroke before kicking. When I say kicking, it's not the baby kicking in the womb, but make them listen to them and nicely empathize. And from once in a way, there's I slightly digress here. A wonderful word in the English language is I wonder. I say, I wonder, maybe could it be this way? Just put a thought, and that putting that thought is what I mean by kicking. So stroke, 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 the adult who brings your child to you for consultation, for advice, and then put your thoughts in. Don't jump in. I can illustrate this with a case where it still sticks in my mind, where a mother brought her 8-year-old son because the son was refusing to go to school. Now, the boy was extremely clever. He was one of the people who had an IQ about 130, and particularly very good in mathematics. He was a genius. He was loved at the school, he was popular, but he stopped going to school. And even when they forcefully took him to school, the teacher said he's not concentrating as before and he is failing. So when the parents brought this boy to me with this problem of school refusal, which is a common problem, I just listened to their story and they said, you got to get this boy back to school, doctor, somehow. That's what their main concern was. So listening to their story and I asked, how long was this problem going on? They said 3 months. Okay, so does he show these problems? How is his behavior at home? So you've got to look at the behavior at school, at home, with the grandparents, if he goes to any extracurricular activity, always find out how their behavior is over there. So here are the parents, so I asked, how is the behavior at home? Then they said, he's very naughty at home. He will pinch his sister and make her cry. And when we send him to his room, somehow, when he's unnoticed, he'll come down and pinch the sister again because we hear her cry. And so I asked, how old is the baby? How old is the sister? Sorry. Said 3 months. Now, in all of you, the penny would have dropped. The problem at school refusal is also 3 months. Now, the parents didn't tell you that at the beginning. So 3 months. So I said, oh my God, you all must have been very happy that after about nearly 7 years that you had a baby girl. And you could see the glow in their face. They were so happy. Yes, they said, yes, we were very happy. So I asked whether this little boy, let's call him John, was John happy too? They said, no, he wanted a baby brother to play with. So what does he say when you talk to him about why he doesn't go to school? Again, I'm emphasizing to find out from the child himself. Say, I don't want to go to school. I will go to school when my sister goes to school. Again, the penny drops in all of you. What he's lacking now, he's unable to share the attention from he had it for 7 years with this new baby girl. Now, usually, when you see a family with a child with a problem like this, very often the child is listening, they got flapping ears, and sometimes and very often in my practice, I find that they will separate from you and be seen on your own. And we normally have a lot of drawing materials, toys, and so on, play materials. And this boy, while this talk was going on, was drawing. So when I saw him on his own, I said, can I see the drawing that you made? He immediately turned the paper over. He didn't want to show me. So I said, fair enough. You haven't finished the drawing, maybe. You want to show it to your mom, or you can easily take it home with you. Then I said, your mom and dad are saying that you don't want to go to school. Why not? You're very clever. Why is that? So he looked at me and said, I will go to school when my sister goes to school. Why is that? Why do you want to stay at home with sister? Remember, I said this boy was a genius. He was very, very clever. Much cleverer than me. Because he looked at me and said, of course. But then I said to him, your mom and dad say they love you both very much. Then he said, looked at me and said, yes, they like me very much. But when they love me very much, now they equally love you and your sister. So what's the problem? He looked at me as if I was a fool. And he said, before my sister was born, look at this boy who is a genius, of course. They loved me 100%. And now they love me 50% and my sister 50%. So for me, I have lost out. He was absolutely correct. The other thing about working with children is interesting is when you put yourself in the child's shoes and try to see what he wants now. So I tried to put myself in this boy's shoes. And what was obvious to me, he wants me to tell me and that he wants his parents to love him 100%. He has worked it all out. How can I say that? So for a moment, I just prayed, oh God, give me an answer to this boy. Because I felt with him the longing to be told my mother and father love me still 100%. This is where when you put yourself in the child's shoes, you can feel with them. And the God answered my prayer, I think. So I told him, yes, I understand, John, but your mom and dad loves you still 100%. They love your little sister 100%. If you have another sister or brother, they will love that person also 100%, because love doesn't shrink, it grows, it grows. And I still can see this child looked at me to say, are you telling the truth? So as to ask me. So I nodded. So he went back and finished his drawing. And then I looked at the drawing. He had drawn a mom figure, a father figure, and a girl and a boy. And I knew the one he didn't want me to see first had only the boy, not the sister in that. So I said, you can take it with you home. And he went to the waiting room and he ran and gave both his parents a big hug and looked at me. So this is not rocket science. The thing is to put yourself in the child's shoes and see how they feel. This happens even with adults, but with children, if you can bring yourself down to their level, you can feel with them. That is why they say child psychiatrists don't age, because they're always working with children and go down to their level. I don't know whether it applies to me, but I really do enjoy my work, or did enjoy
Now,
it now.
now we know the secret, Dr. Shanthy, why you are always at that age. Of course, not intellectually, but emotionally, you're always like, ready to have a play and have fun. So we know the secret behind it now. Thank you so much. It was such an interesting story. And I can see why he wouldn't agree, or he was reluctant, because, of course, mathematically, it doesn't make sense to say that love will expand. So it was good to know that adults who are usually the first point of contact to the children before they come to the psychologist or psychiatrist. So what are the questions they should ask themselves, or what are the things they should notice before seeking help, which will make them understand the situation a bit better, Dr. Shanthy?
Again, a very good question, Menaca. It looks like you have been thinking about this subject, yes, and being a parent yourself. I think one of the things that parents need to do and need to know is how to talk to their children. And that is, as I said, bring down to their level of thinking, taking into account their age, and ask them, how often do parents have time in their busy life to sit and talk to a child? And I always say that this is something important. Maybe for me it is important. When a child goes to bed, we all read bedtime stories. That's very good. Well done. But if you can spend about 5 minutes, maximum 10 minutes, when the child is going to bed, having finished the story or no story, just sit beside with them. They may not talk to you, but why it is important is we know that when you are going to bed, particularly for children, their thoughts are quickly come bombarded, and the emotions also move from one to another in quick succession. It's only when they go to bed the day's happenings comes to their mind and what worries them surface. And when those worries and thoughts surface, who is best there with them on their bed is the loving parent. So the parent can spare that 5 or 10 minutes. Let them talk. They will talk about what happened in the playground, which they wouldn't have mentioned to you when they came back home, because they were interested to get the snack and eat and so on. And it passes very quickly through their lives. It's only at bedtime these thoughts surface, and whatever worries they have, they'll be able to talk to you. Don't think that you have to spend half an hour or 1 hour. Yes, some children will cotton on and say, don't go, ma, I got another story to tell you. What I do is advise parents have an alarm clock, a clock. They have the big hand. So tell, I'm going to sit with you till this big hand from 10 moves to 12, right? And when it comes to that 12, stick to your time and say, right, that's an interesting story. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So if that is made consistent approach, way to talk to your child, believe me, it helps the child. Don't talk to two or three children together. If the mother talks today, let the father talk to the boy, or vice versa. The next day you can change, because the children would like to be on their own to talk about the problems that they have faced during the day.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Shanthy. It's really important for us to understand all these in the background. We really don't understand how children think or why they behave in a certain way. So what are the difficulties usually children face? Because, unless and until we know what are difficulties they face, I guess it's much more difficult as parents or carers for us to look after them in a way their mental well-being is always enriched.
I think again, going back to children's, they have, this is theoretical classification, but usually we talk about in young children, emotional problems. Emotional problems. Secondly, conduct problems that are behavior problems. Then they have developmental problems, that they have reading difficulties, specific reading difficulties. They may have uh, speech delay and so on. So developmental problems, and also relationship problems, how they communicate and socialize with others. All know about ADHD, and more importantly about autism. So there are relationship problems. So the parent will pick up these differences. They must be able to compare a friend's child at this age. How is that child different from mine? But always bearing in mind, each child is unique. No two children, or for that matter, no two individuals are same in this world. Even identical twins have different personalities and so on. So never ever compare your child with another. But if you're concerned about the child's behavior, the child looks rather odd, is not happy, or is having learning difficulty, or is getting angry, showing aggressive behavior all the time, then you got to think that there may be something. And first of all, you can talk to the teacher and see whether the behavior is shown at school as well, or with your grandparents, for example. And then you still concerned that you cannot contain that behavior, then please do not hesitate to talk to your GP and get help accordingly, and they will signpost to where the help can be. It doesn't need think immediately, oh, they're going to put my child on medication or going to label your child. In fact, one of the things that I emphasize is try not to label a child. Put a label on the child, because a label sticks. And when the child grows out of it, what are you going to stick? What has stuck on him will or her will carry on. So don't put a label on a child, because the problems either they will grow out of it or will change. So never put a label. And we don't put a label, we'll just say maybe emotional problems or so on. But there are certain categories like autism or ADHD, we may put a label because those cases may need more complex interventions.
Thank you, Dr. Shanthy. While you were speaking, I was thinking about you saying, okay, you'll put a clock and we'll stop when the child goes to sleep. I think increasingly, including myself, most of the parents can relate to that. bedtime becomes a problem, or when you have to ask them to study or do something else. And we had this conversation with Dr. Shanthy a couple of days back when I was speaking to her as well, and I was mentioning something what my daughter said to me once. I will say that, but before that, I would like to listen to what Dr. Shanthy has to say about it. How can we manage this situation?
Sorry, I didn't exactly follow the question because I got carried on with your talk about your daughter. What is the problem about that?
Yeah.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
That's okay. Children, like if they have to go to bed, because you mentioned that let's put a clock, and after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you assign for it, you say, that's it. We will listen to it tomorrow, or even sending the children to bed or asking them to do something. How is the best way to manage that so that the relationship is also maintained and the children's well-being is also not compromised at the same time?
Yes, that's a difficult question, but if you look at, it's really to break it down to steps, because most parents, with all good intentions, with love, will say, right, it's bedtime, can you please go and brush your teeth? When you say that, what happens? You are giving the child a choice. Can you please brush your teeth? So it can say, no, I'm not brushing my teeth. So there's a choice. So make your very clear instruction. Instead of just say, look, as I said, the clock, I'll give you 5 minutes. The hand is on 10. When the hand goes to 11, you can go, and please go upstairs and brush your teeth. There is no other alternative. There is no choice. So you give him or her, the child, 5 minutes, because one of the things that children hate is to think we got to comply immediately. It doesn't go even for adults for that matter, but children doesn't like it. So they're given 5 minutes, and a minute before it comes, they will look at you to see you really teach you whether you really mean. And you'll say, therefore, 1 minute before the time, if you want, you can say, there's only 1 minute more. So they're given the warning. And when the time comes, and if they don't move, take them by the hand. And that is the time, very important for you to feel when you're marching your child upstairs to get them to brush their teeth. You've got water in your mouth. If you open, the water will spill. Silence. You don't talk. You're talking, you're saying it by your behavior. Take them upstairs, and they know then what you mean, that you really mean what you want them to do, and that message gets through, hopefully. So that's one way of doing it. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Precisely. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. Because what I wanted to say about the conversation, what I had as a mother with my child or my daughter, is I asked exactly how you said once, can you please do something? And of course, she said, no, I can't at that particular moment. And I got upset. So children teach you much more than you know. At least I learn all the time. So she turned around and said, Mom, like if you wanted me to just do it and you're going to get upset if I don't do, then why did you say, can you please do it? Because then I always have the right to say no. Then you shouldn't get upset. Otherwise, just say, just do it. So, that was the point. And, of course, clear instructions, something which I learned, and I'm going to take it forward. Sometimes you do need this even with the adults.
Yes. That's a very good example, and also shows that the child is very, very intelligent.
Most of the children are, I think, more intelligent than us, Dr. Shanthy, isn't it? Like, with generation, they're becoming much more intelligent, and they know so much more as well. So I know you created a booklet called Silent Bystanders, and it was explaining how silent bystanders?
Yes, yeah. Silent bystanders.
Which was explaining how children are affected by mental health issues and of parents. Can you please elaborate on that?
I think I don't know whether people can see, but this
I can share, Dr. Shanthy, if you just bear with me for 1 second. I will share it.
No worries.
I have got hold of the picture. So. Can everyone see that? Yeah. Yes, Dr. Shanthy, over to you.
Right. As I said, I began psychiatry training with adults. And then when I moved to subspecialize with children and adolescents, one of the things I noticed when the trainees come to me who are doing adult psychiatry for their child psychiatry training, they're very surprised, firstly, and firstly, they are very cannot understand about children's problem. Leaving that alone, they do not, when they are doing adult psychiatry, they see only the adult man, the adult woman who's got the problem, say a psychotic illness, schizophrenia, manic depressive, or and just alone with almost blinkers. They do not take a holistic approach. They don't know how many children whether these people have, what effect their patient's illness has on their children. They don't take that into account. So sometimes I have done a joint ward round with adult colleagues and really asked how many children, who is looking after your child when you are in hospital? Is it a grandparent or is the child on his own or who is taking him or her to school? Those also affect the outcome of their adult illnesses. And people don't realize the effect that it has on the children. So when we in our clinic saw a number of children whose parents had mental illness and how it has affected them, and they were coming to us, we wrote this booklet called Silent Bystanders. That is, these children are silent bystanders. Nobody tells them what's happening to their mothers. Nobody tells them what is wrong with their fathers. So, what do the children do? The young children have a fantasy thinking mode. They will think the worst. That day I didn't obey my mother. Is that why she took an overdose and she was taken to hospital? The other day, my mother went mad. That's the word they use. And social workers come, police come, because you know in our country, in UK, if you are a danger to yourself or a danger to others, and you do not take treatment and come to the point when you are a danger, the rule that there's a governmental regulation that these people can be taken under a section and be admitted against their wishes. So to do that, normally social workers come into the house, the police come and taken in ambulance. Can you just imagine what thoughts, fears, anxieties that go produced in the children? So much so, when they did a study, some teenagers said, please, to the social workers, a request to doctors, please talk to us. We are not, I still remember one comment was, we are not aliens. We live with our parents. We need to know what is happening to them. That fear. So talking to the children is very important. You don't have to talk like a friend and tell anything and everything, but you can tell them, yes, I'm not well. Today, I want to be by myself alone. Please go and play with your sister or your grandma is there, or nominate another adult who will take over. But I love you, but I want to be alone. If the parent can talk to the child that way, the child will understand or will not blame. I know cases where we have seen the child has becoming very clingy, will not leave the mother to go to school because afraid what will happen to the mother when they are outside. So they take on more responsibility than is needed. And all that causes mental I wouldn't say mental disorders, mental difficulty for them to cope when they are later on. For example, they, they will blame themselves, they feel guilty for their parental illness. So please, please, it's important to talk to the children. They say, another comment made by when we did the study was, please talk to us. And I think another thing when you asked Menaca before, what parents can do, please listen. Give them time to talk before you interrupt and tell, no, 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 it's not that way. This is the way. Listen to them because they will have another explanation, which then you can clarify. If you didn't give them time to talk about how they felt, you won't clarify what their fears and tell them what is right and what is wrong.
Thank you so much. And as a parent, I'm sure I have learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else has also learned a lot about how to maintain the well-being of children. I know that you have gone quite comprehensively and told quite a bit for us. Would you be able to just tell 5 tips again, just to the most important 5 tips, how parents can actually enhance the mental well-being of their children, or even carers, teachers, families?
Right. Now you are trying me to condense things, which I find always difficult. So I thought of it and wrote something. As I said before, remember every child is unique. They have their strengths and weaknesses. If you can help with their weaknesses, address their weaknesses, please do. Get help. If you boost their strength, sometimes that will overshadow the weaknesses and the weaknesses will not be so obvious. So for that, always think each child, if you have 5 children, each child is unique. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. Please, please do not compare. That's the one message I want to give. And of course, another maxim that we say is ignore the bad behavior and praise the good behavior. It's easily said, but it's difficult. How often do we see young children playing by themselves very happily and we leave them alone? Just peace and quiet. Thankfully, we have some peace and quiet. The minute they drop something or break something, we are on to them like a ton of bricks. So what does the child learn? If I want to get my attention from my parents, I have to do naughty things. So please talk to them when they are playing well, or you're drawing something. What did you draw? Talk to them. So praise the good behavior and ignore the bad behavior. And I think I have said this already. Clear instructions. No ambivalence. Do this or do this, otherwise their child will take you on it and make a choice themselves, and then which you won't be happy with. We didn't talk about adolescence. Adolescence is a stage at which all the emotions and feelings surge upwards. Not only feelings, their growth spurt. There's a question of their identity. For them at this stage, their peer group is important because it's only with peers they compare themselves. Are they good or bad? And it is important at this stage that people think, oh my God, they're growing pains. They don't come down from their rooms even to have a meal with us. They're playing on the computer, and just let us leave them alone. They will grow out of it. Please, please, please don't do that. Have a line of communication, very important with the adolescent, with your teenager. Even if they say, Mom, you don't understand, you don't need to know. Why do you want to know that? You don't understand. The fact that you did ask, that is what is important. That later will give them the feeling that you do care. I know I'm going to say this, which is very sad. Depression in teenagers is not uncommon. We hear deliberate self-harm behavior. We have even seen completed suicide. And one case where the boy was at college, he comes home unexpectedly. The parents said, Oh my God, what brings you in? But don't worry, there's food on the table. We are just going out. We won't be long. It's very sad. When they come back, they see the boy hanging from the banister. Now, it's not their fault, but at that time, did anybody pause to think and ask, why did you come suddenly? Is there anything wrong? Do you want anything? I know you have already made plans. It comes there unexpectedly. But any unexpected incident like that, I think parents should think, yes, they don't have to cancel, but they would have said, come along with us. Or if they say no, one parent could have stayed behind. But I'm not blaming the parent, but do be aware that adolescent depression is not uncommon. And at this stage, as a teenager, they can be impulsive. Once you are dead, they can't come alive and tell you why they did it. So please talk, and please, the fourth tip you asked me is please have a line of communication open, particularly with teenagers. And of course, I would say this lastly, set a good example yourself. Be a good role model to them. If I have time, I have a one poem written by an author unknown. Can I read that?
Sure. Of course, Dr. Shanthy, please do.
Right. And I think it says it all. Children learn what they live. If a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, he learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, he learns to feel guilty. If a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, he learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with fairness, he learns justice. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith. If a child lives with approval, he learns to like himself. If a child lives with acceptance and friendship, he learns to find love in the world. I thought that was so nice. I don't know, ask me where I got this. I always had this for a very long time. And sadly, the author is unknown, so I can't tell you where to look it up in Google. But I thought that was something that I always had it with me. And I think that says it all in a nutshell.
It's a beautiful point, Dr. Shanthy. Thank you so much for sharing it. You have supported with most of the things whenever I have spoken to you, or even on Soul Strings all the time. Can you tell us how we can take Soul Strings forward? What is your advice for us, or any feedback for us, or suggestion, how we can take this platform forward to help many more people and make it a worthy cause?
I think you are doing a wonderful job. I'm not saying it just for your face. You have used this platform to talk about a lot of issues that are relevant. It may be good if today, if people on chat write what they would like to learn more about. And if that is relevant to them, that's good. But I think talking about the child mental health and for children, for me is another important subject is grief. How? Because you start your television, the button, and you see wars, Yemen, here and there, children suffering. And these children not only lose their loved ones, that is that they have to come to terms with, they are lost, they are displaced, they are also lose some possessions that they really love. And to lose those, they may be simple things, but to them it's a great loss. And that is no comfort. So, how do we take that forward? The grief in children alongside with adults. How can we use the two together to help? Because for children, grief is another big subject in its own. I don't think we have time. But for a child, I remember, I know I'm just a visual person. I remember this little boy was brought by the father because the mother, in the middle of the night, had been complaining of a headache, and suddenly the father had to take the mother to the hospital and uh, called his mother to come and babysit. Took the mother, and unfortunately, it was a brain tumor. It had aneurysm, it had burst, and the mother died there. So the father comes back to tell the child, and the father, I saw the father because the father brought the boy along with him, was a very nice father who understood the boy's feeling. And so when he came back from the hospital, he sat down with the boy in his bed and explained what it all happened and then went away. So why was this child boy coming to see me? Because the father said he's unhappy, he doesn't concentrate, he's not doing well at school. The father was also going through his grief reaction. He couldn't properly sit and talk with the boy because that he had bottled his grief within. It was the third session. The father brings a letter to show me because I think I may have the letter with me, but in short, what it says the boy had said is yes, uh, it took him 3 sessions to write this letter to his father and and the father brought that letter to me. There's a lot of mistakes here, spelling mistakes, but the gist is please excuse my apologies. I have a confession to make. On the night that mom died, Speckles, that was his gerbil, died too. It was my fault. I was playing with her. Remember, the father had suddenly gone, taken the mother to the hospital, didn't tell him what was happening, so he could imagine anything. He felt unhappy, so he took this one. He was not allowed to take him out of the cage and have it with him when he goes to bed, but he wanted some comfort. So he took the gerbil with him to bed, and I was playing with her, and you came in. So I put her under my pillow, and she suffocated. I hope you will understand. What I'm saying is, a child grief, he blamed the death of his mother to the fact that he killed the gerbil by suffocating under the pillow. And the father couldn't talk to the boy. So the importance you said about talking, so there are certain other areas like grief reaction, and we see that in children, how they can't see the permanent, under 5 years, they don't think that the person is really dead and gone permanently. I knew a little boy who the parents didn't tell was dead, and the father was living, it was in Sri Lanka, and the father died while here in UK. And every time a plane goes up, he would say, bye bye, dad, bye bye, dad. Because for him, the father was still alive, although not with him. So, grief work is an important work because alongside that, traumatic work with children. But on the other hand, people would know more about it. I don't know. So it is very important to ask them, and they would make suggestions on this chat and tell you, Menaca, what subjects they would like to discuss further.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Shanthy. As ever, I know that I have heard you speak so many times. We have learned a lot. And of course, I might be coming back to ask you to come and speak about the trauma and grief, because I know you have done a lot of work in here and Sri Lanka and across the world. So I might be coming back. For the time being, huge thank you from bottom of my heart and on part of all of us on Soul Strings. Before I pass it on to Dr. Kanta Niranjan for the vote of thanks, I would like to introduce the next speaker for the next week, Raza Khan. He is going to be speaking about building the emotional muscle. Just after hearing Dr. Shanthy, what a great timing, because he is a business growth mentor, he is a public speaker, but more than anything else, I am interested in him being the emotional intelligence coach, because I have heard him speak. I am really looking forward to learning more about how to build our emotional muscle, because then we can become better parents, better spouse, better children, better social beings as such. Over to you, Dr. Kanta, for the vote of thanks, please.
On behalf of Soul Strings, I have an immense pleasure in thanking Dr. Shanthy Parameswaran, consultant psychiatrist. A wonderful presentation today with a number of practical tips to most of us, all of us listening here. Some of us has passed our parenthood. I am a grandmother now. So all the talk, what you were giving a very clear and precise information about how to tackle, deal with children, how to identify their difficulties, how to talk to the children, and the time the parents have to spare for their children. Lot of information you have given today. It is really a very wonderful presentation to all of us, and I'm really grateful on behalf of Soul Strings to have you as our great speaker today. Thank you so much. And also, as you mentioned, you talked about setting a role model for the children. That may represent as, now for example, I am a doctor, but my mother was a teacher. I never looked at her as a role model until later stage of my life. When I became the mother and grandmother only, I thought like my mother was a good role model for the life. It's not for the whatever the education we get, but it's a good role model. So whatever way a mother, whatever education or whatever mother or father, in which way, giving them as a good role model for their, this thing is very important for the children. And you mentioned that today, which is a take-home message I have taken as well. Thank you very much. Reminded my parents as well. Thank you very much. Very good talk.
Thank you for asking. That was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shanthy and Dr. Kanta. For those who are listening in Facebook, we are going to end this session on the Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. We are looking forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Until then, stay safe, be happy, and keep smiling.